Namaskar, friends. We welcome you this evening, a rather cold and rainy evening, to the 60th edition of Art Matters, organized by the Raza Foundation in collaboration with India International Center. We complete today 6 years. We have been at it for 6 years, thinking that art continues to matter. And we are very happy that on the 60th, in the 60th edition, we are going to discuss a comparatively lesser noticed and discussed phenomena of new museums. We have a current state of affairs of museums, a rather sad one. Most of the museums in the country are public museums. There are very few private museums. And the public museums, like all other public services, are poorly, incompetently, unprofessionally handled and run. In that scenario, the emergence of some new museums is a very positive development. And these museums have been set up by individuals, private initiatives, except one, or except two perhaps, in recent times. One is the tribal museum set up by the government of Madhya Pradesh in Bhopal, and the other is Bihar Museum set up in Patna by Bihar government. So we have these exceptions, but otherwise the people we have invited this evening are those who have taken a personal and private initiative to set up and run museums. So we have O.P. Jain, who is a very well-known figure in Delhi scene of culture. He set up long time ago the Sanskriti Kendra in Anandagram, which has a complex of 3 museums. A museum of everyday life, a museum of terracotta, and a museum of textiles. This is one of the most important private initiatives. He started as a businessman and ran into Mulkraj Anand, as he describes it, who said, "It will be a pity if you die as a businessman." And he decided to die, I hope he lived long, as a lover of arts rather than a man of culture rather than a businessman. Although he brought the business acumen to running a cultural institution. The second institution is a one artist museum of the celebrated sculptor Amarnath SEHGAL. And RAJAN SEHGAL, who has set up the museum, also happens to be the son of the artist, has created this museum in Jangpura extension, where Amarnath used to live. He comes from, he has been a managing director, he's a man of finance, comes from a managing director and business area head of Africa and NRI of Credit Suisse in the international wealth management. I am so unused to these words that I don't even pronounce them properly. So this is a single artist museum, and we should have actually really more of such museums who should store, archive, research, and display works of important artists. But this is one of the first, and in Delhi, this is the first, I think. He is a BA in economics and International School of Business, New York, etc. Now we have YUSUF, the third one, who is at the moment the director of Patna, Bihar Museum in Patna, which is designed by a Japanese architect and is supposed to be having raving reviews as an architectural phenomenon. YUSUF is a painter basically. He joined us in Bharat Bhavan when Swaminathan started a campaign to collect tribal and folk artworks of Madhya Pradesh. He was one of the main persons. And then we decided that some of the more talented and the more dedicated persons who were involved, they were all art students at that time, that they should be absorbed in Bharat Bhavan. So YUSUF was absorbed in Bharat Bhavan. He became finally the director or whatever. He set up workshops, a printmaking workshop and things of that kind. And he has been awarded, more importantly, I think, Raza Foundation Award. He knew Raza Saab quite well, although that is not the reason why we have invited him. We have invited him because he is running a new museum and a government museum at that. The fourth person who's yet to arrive, he's on his way from the airport, is ASHWIN RAJGOPALAN. He again comes from a non-artistic background. He first established Ashwita, whatever that means, in Chennai, and now he is the director of Piramal Art Foundation, a philanthropic organization that runs the Piramal Museum of Art in Mumbai. So we have these four persons, two of them actually running the show, as it were, and two of them who made the show possible. So we like to know from them as to how do they feel having a museum, what are the difficulties, public and private, what are the anxieties, if any. If you go, we are not a museum-running, museum-going people. Indians have a strange way of behaving. When they are abroad, they visit every possible museum. When they are in India, they don't visit any museum almost at all. So you have a very poor number of visitors, whether to the National Museum or to Crafts Museum or to the National Gallery of Modern Art. They are very, very small. When we had established Bharat Bhavan, one of the strong points, I used to say, behind every thing that we do, there is a very noble intention, and there is a not too noble an intention. And the not too noble an intention behind what we are doing in Bharat Bhavan was, which is best described in a Hindi word, Dilli Dard Daman, that we should sort of destroy the arrogance of Delhi. And it turned out that we destroyed it in different ways, but one of the major ways was that Bharat Bhavan would have in 1 year, a number of visitors used to be 1 lakh, which at that time was not the total number of visitors of National Museum, National Gallery of Modern Art. Later, Crafts Museum became a more attractive site. But that is because you could buy things and, sort of things of that kind. But art museums are, so what do we do? Is it merely because we don't have, these museums are run in a manner which are not very visitor friendly, they are not instructive, you'll find that their labels are missing, or there's dust around, or things of that kind. But basically, because perhaps sometimes I think, why is it that we were not a museum-going people? Because at some time we thought our temples were the museums. They were created as museums. They were also created as cultural centers, but they also became museums in the sense that everything worthwhile was there and you could see and all that. Now, that has, although we have a current climate where the temple issue is being raised again stupidly, but anyway, that's not because they want to build a museum there. They want to build something which was never existed there, perhaps. But anyway, that's besides the point. Point is that museum going is not an Indian habit. Spitting is, palm eating is, talking loudly at the top of your voice without caring whether it disturbs others or not is. Even in IIC, where you have a written notice on every table, please speak slowly or low tones, but our friends, of course, talk at the top of their voice, etc., etc. And yet we had a sect of silence. We were the people who believed. Gandhiji used to keep quiet for one day, every week. So we are full of these kinds of contradictions, and I can go on, having done some work myself in museums and taken care of some of them, etc., etc. For instance, when I joined because we couldn't find a Director General for National Museum, as Joint Secretary, it was my job. So look after the National Museum also. And we had a visitor coming, and I asked I was trying to sell an idea that a show of the miniature paintings from National Museum should be sold to that visitor, who was an important visitor from abroad. So I asked my assistant curator, who used to look after the collection, to write a curatorial note. And he said, curatorial note? I said, why? Aren't you and he was called curator. So I said, but you are a curator, so what is it that I am asking? He said, we have never done this. So you see, it is this completely unprofessional approach. We have people who are there, even if they started professional, they become die-hard bureaucrats in the worst sense. Die-hard clerks, really, who can't take a decision, who can't keep the inventory, who can't do this. So this is one big problem. The other problem, when Bharat Bhavan was being constructed, Charles Correa wanted especially that the building should lie low, nestle on the banks of a big lake in Bhopal. It should not rise in arrogance, which is the one other sort of disturbing feature of a museum. There are huge iron gates and things of that kind, so you feel awed by the iron gate. You will be stopped and you will be asked 200 questions and this, that, and the other. Nowadays, perhaps they'll be asking for an Aadhaar card, I don't know, or whatever. So all these have created as if our museums and our hospitals and our hostels are like jails, where one would fear entering because you never know what is there. So it is in this context we thought, let us hear the story of the museum. So who will start?
ये अच्छी पहल है कि बहुत सारी चीज़ों के बारे में कोई नहीं सोच रहा, अशोक जी सोच रहे हैं। ये मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगा कि कोई म्यूज़ियम के बारे में सोचता नहीं है। बनाने का तो बहुत सोचते हैं और उस तरह से चलाने का भी बहुत सोचते हैं, मगर उसकी जो प्रॉब्लम है म्यूज़ियम्स की, वो उसके बारे में कोई बातचीत करने को तैयार नहीं है। तो मैं बिहार म्यूज़ियम मैंने 14 फरवरी से संभाला है और ये जापान के आर्किटेक्ट हैं माकी, उनका डिज़ाइन है। डिज़ाइन बहुत अच्छा है, म्यूज़ियम भी बहुत अच्छा है और उसकी जो जैसे अभी अशोक जी ने कहा कि कोई म्यूज़ियम विजिट नहीं करता है उस तरह से, मगर पटना अपवाद है। मैं थोड़ा सा ये बता दूं कि विगत वर्षों में निजी संग्रहालयों की संख्या में वृद्धि तो हुई है। इसका मुख्य कारण व्यापारिक घराने व राजवंशों की रुचि है। संग्रहालय एक स्थान पर कला संग्रह और कला समुदायों व कलाकारों को कला साझा करने का अच्छा माध्यम है। सरकारी संग्रहालयों में प्रक्रिया जटिल होती है, जिसके कारण दर्शकों को असुविधा होती है। अर्थ एवं आधुनिक संसाधनों के अभाव में सरकारी संग्रहालय अपनी व्यावसायिक खोजपूर्ण दृष्टि और दर्शकों के अनुकूल नहीं हो पाते। परंतु मैं बिहार संग्रहालय के बारे में ये कह सकता हूँ कि इन सब शंकाओं से परे है। बिहार संग्रहालय पटना में प्रतिदिन 1500 से 2000 दर्शक आते हैं और सैटरडे संडे 4 से 5000 आते हैं। और नए साल में पुलिस बुलानी पड़ती है उनको कंट्रोल करने के लिए, 15-20 हजार लोग आते हैं। तो ये मेरे लिए भी बड़ा अलग सा अनुभव था। मैंने भारत भवन में ये अनुभव लिया है कि बहुत सारे दर्शक उस वक्त आते थे और पूरे हिंदुस्तान भर में जो है उसकी एक चर्चा होती थी। तो मुझे ये लगता है कि कोई सा भी संग्रहालय हो, अगर उसमें विजनरी कोई ऐसा दृष्टिवान आदमी नहीं है तो ये संभव नहीं है। अशोक जी थे, स्वामी जी थे, तो उनकी दृष्टि इतनी व्यापक थी कि लोग उसकी तरफ आने लगे थे। और जो सरकारी संग्रहालय होते हैं, ज़्यादातर ऐसे लोग बैठ जाते हैं जिन्होंने कभी फिल्मी गाने पे कुछ किताब लिखी है या कोई छोटी मोटी कुछ ऐसी चीज़ लिख दी है, तो वो अपने को उस श्रेणी का मानने लगते हैं। इसलिए ये थोड़ा सा प्रॉब्लम होता है वहाँ पर। बिहार संग्रहालय केवल एक इमारत भर नहीं है, बल्कि दर्शकों के अनुकूल ऐसा संग्रहालय है जो वस्तु पर केंद्रित न होकर दर्शक केंद्रित है, जो दर्शकों को आमंत्रित कर अनुभव साझा करने का निमंत्रण देता है। क्या बच्चे क्या बड़े, सब प्रकार के दर्शक स्वयं जानकारी प्राप्त करते हैं। उनका ईवीएम सिस्टम भी है और बहुत सारे ऐसे सिस्टम है जिसमें आप खुद एक्सपीरियंस करके उसके बारे में जानकारी ले सकते हैं। तो वो अनुभव एक्सपीरियंस म्यूजियम भी उसको बोलते हैं हमारे यहाँ। और बिहार संग्रहालय पटना में कई दीर्घाएं, जैसे ऐतिहासिक दीर्घा, ये हिस्ट्री गैलरी है, डायस्पोरा गैलरी है, कंटेम्प्रेरी गैलरी है, चिल्ड्रन गैलरी है, ऑडिटोरियम है, सोवेनियर शॉप है, कैफेटेरिया है। तो ये सारी चीज़ें जो हैं दर्शकों को आकर्षित करती हैं। तो उनमें हर एक के लिए कुछ ना कुछ देखने को, जानने को, सोचने को, समझने को मिलता है। बिहार संग्रहालय अपने समय के अन्य संग्रहालयों की स्पर्धा में नहीं है, बल्कि उन जगहों की स्पर्धा में है जहां ज्यादातर लोग जाना पसंद करते हैं। बिहार संग्रहालय में भी ये सब सुविधाएं हैं जहां लोग अपने ज्ञान और शिक्षा के साथ मनोरंजन एवं फिल्म का लाभ भी ले रहे हैं। बिहार संग्रहालय में बहुत से नए प्रयोगों के लिए योजना बना रहे हैं। दर्शक लगातार संग्रहालय के भ्रमण पर आ रहे हैं। वे संग्रहालय से नई ऊर्जा और आनंद प्राप्त कर बिहार संग्रहालय की स्थापना व उद्देश्य को सार्थक बनाते हैं। मैं इस संग्रहालय का हिस्सा बनकर गौरवान्वित हूँ। मैं चाहूँगा कि मैं थोड़ा सा उसको एक फिल्म दिखा के आपको बता सकूं कि उसकी क्या आर्किटेक्चरल वैल्यू है और उसकी जो गैलरी है उनका क्या महत्व है। तो विनोद भारद्वाज ने उसको भी बड़ी अच्छी एक फिल्म बनाई है, तो प्लीज़ ज़रा उसको थोड़ा दिखाएं।
दीदारगंज की यक्षी है। यक्षी को कई नामों से जाना जाता है, शाल भंजिका, वृश्चिका, सुरा सुंदरी, लंबी सूची है। भारत का शानदार इतिहास पलटे तो हम पाते हैं कि ये सुंदर स्त्रियां उर्वरता की प्रतीक और संतुष्टि, विपुलता एवं सृजन की अग्रदूत मानी जाती रही है। यक्षी को अब अपना नया जादूघर मिल गया है, बिहार संग्रहालय। ये घर अपने आप में एक जादुई संसार है, जहां निरंतर विकसित हो रहे राज्य के समकालीन झरोखे से बिहार के गौरवशाली अतीत की झलक पाई जा सकती है। हम अक्सर अपना अतीत भूल जाते हैं। इस संग्रहालय की स्थापना का उद्देश्य यही है कि हमारे साथ साथ पूरी दुनिया को इस राज्य की लगातार दमकती विरासत से रूबरू कराया जा सके।
हमारी नई पीढ़ी के लोग उनको इस तरह से उन एक्टिविटीज को दिखाया जाए कि वो इंटरटेन भी हो और उनको जानकारी भी मिले। तो उसको ठीक ढंग से जो आज दुनिया भर में नए तरीके से जो म्यूजियम का निर्माण हुआ, संग्रहालय बनाने का जो नया तरीका, तो ऐसा तो अभी हिंदुस्तान में कहीं, भारत में नहीं। तो उसी समय हम लोगों ने तय किया कि हम लोग ये जो नया तरीका है उसी को अपनाएं और ये अंतर्राष्ट्रीय स्तर का बनाएं।
बिहार संग्रहालय की यात्रा एक संपूर्ण अनुभव है, जहां कलाकृतियों को देखने का आनंद उठाया जा सकता है, उनके बारे में जानकारी पाई जा सकती है, साथ ही भोजन, मनोरंजन और ध्यान भी लगाया जा सकता है। इसे एक विश्वविद्यालय परिसर की तरह विकसित किया गया है, जहां सभी गलियारे एक दूसरे से जुड़े हैं और बाहर की ओर विस्तृत है।
जब बिहार झारखंड अलग हुआ तो बिहार के पास जो बचा तो हमारा कल्चर, हमारा इतिहास और हमारे जो लोग, तो बिहार को एक विकास का रास्ता चुनना था। तो सरकार ने ये सोचा, खासकर हमारे मुख्यमंत्री ने ये सोचा कि हम लोग अपने कल्चर को, इतिहास को, अपने हिस्ट्री को, इसको सामने लाएं लोगों के सामने। इससे दो तीन फायदे हैं। एक फायदा तो ये है कि लोग, बिहार के लोग जानेंगे कि हमारा कितना गौरवशाली इतिहास रहा है, और पूरा देश जानेगा कि हिंदुस्तान के बनने में एक जब पाटलिपुत्र राजधानी हुआ करती थी, उस समय में बोला जाता है कि स्वर्ण काल था भारत का। तो ये सारी चीज सारे लोग जाने, बिहार के लोग जाने, देश के लोग जाने और दुनिया के लोग जाने। इसको शोकेस करने के लिए हम लोगों को एक अच्छे आधुनिक म्यूजियम की, संग्रहालय की आवश्यकता थी। उसी को ध्यान में रख के और माना गया कि इसको अगर हम लोग करते हैं तो इससे अपना एक बहुत बड़ा परिवर्तन राज्य में आएगा। हमारे आगे आने वाले समय में बिहार जो है एक कल्चर का हब बने, एजुकेशन का हब बने, उसके लिए कुछ उस तरह की चीज करने की आवश्यकता थी जो अंतर्राष्ट्रीय स्तर की हो, जैसे बिहार म्यूजियम और काफी बड़ा एक कन्वेंशन कॉम्प्लेक्स। तो ये उसी कल्पना की उपज है।
आज जहां एक तरफ बिहार की राजधानी पटना तीनों स्तरों, विज्ञान, विकास और कला से अपने रिश्ते को भविष्य की अति आधुनिक दुनिया से जोड़कर नई परिभाषा दे रही है, वहीं दूसरी तरफ वो पाटलिपुत्र के समृद्धशाली अतीत से खुद को रचनात्मक रूप से जोड़ने की पहल भी कर रही है। महान मौर्य शासकों की राजधानी पाटलिपुत्र, जिसे आज हम पटना के नाम से जानते हैं, सिर्फ अपने सैन्य बल की वजह से ही प्रसिद्ध नहीं थी, बल्कि कला, संस्कृति और उच्च शिक्षा का केंद्र भी थी। आज नए पटना की पहचान गंगा किनारे स्थित सम्राट अशोक इंटरनेशनल कन्वेंशन सेंटर है, जहां ज्ञान का आवास है। इस ज्ञान के घर का सभ्यता द्वार, जहां हमें भविष्य के नए रास्ते दिखाता है, वहीं हमारे समृद्धशाली अतीत के द्वार भी खोलता है। ये कहा जाता है कि एक कलाकार खुद भी अपनी पुरातन पीढ़ी, अपने अतीत को फिर से रचता है। वो पुराने बंद पड़े दरवाजों को खोलकर उन्हें एक नई रोशनी में दुनिया के सामने रखता है और उनके वजूद को अपने समय से जोड़ता है।
इसमें एक नालंदा की झलक मिलती है, एक तो ये नालंदा के रूइंस की झलक मिलती है। दूसरा, ये बिल्डिंग बिल्कुल इम्पोजिंग नहीं है, ये ग्राउंड+1 ही है पूरा बिल्डिंग जो है। अगर एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव बिल्डिंग छोड़ दीजिए तो ग्राउंड+1 है। तो लोगों को काफी लगता है कि इतना फैला हुआ गोद में बुला रहा है आपको, आप वेलकम है, तो इस तरह का एक फीलिंग आया। तो हम लोग को जब इनका डिजाइन देखे, हमने देखा, माननीय मुख्यमंत्री ने देखा, तो हम लोग तुरंत पसंद आ गया।
अपने आकार के आधार पर भारत का ये लगभग सबसे बड़ा संग्रहालय इस नई पहचान का प्रतीक है। ये आम जनता के लिए 2 अक्टूबर 2017 से खुला हुआ है। जापान की कंपनी माकी एंड एसोसिएट तथा मुंबई की ओपोलिस आर्किटेक्ट ने बिहार संग्रहालय का स्थापत्य डिजाइन किया है। बहुत सारे कला विशेषज्ञ दीदारगंज की यक्षी को भारत की मोनालिसा कहते हैं, लेकिन ये यक्षी बिहार के अनोखे और गौरवशाली अतीत का प्रतीक बने रहना चाहती है।
मिनट की एक अलग थी तो वो थोड़ा कंफ्यूजन हो गया। मगर ये है कि इस संग्रहालय में इतनी सारी चीज़ें हैं हर तबके के लिए, हर उसके उम्र के लोगों के लिए। और हम फिल्म भी इसकी वहाँ पर चलाते हैं, हिस्टोरिकल फिल्में भी चलाते हैं, वैसी फिल्में भी चलाते हैं, फिल्म फेस्टिवल भी करते हैं। तो बच्चों के लिए भी बहुत सारे प्रोग्राम और वर्कशॉप्स करते हैं। तो इस तरह से उसकी जो फुटफॉल है वो बहुत ज़्यादा फुटफॉल है। और 100 रुपये का टिकट है। आप मतलब बहुत सारे, जब मैं पहली बार वहाँ गया तो लोगों ने कहा इतना महंगा टिकट है और ये, मगर जब मैंने देखा कि फुटफॉल इतना ज़्यादा है, 100 रुपया मतलब कुछ भी नहीं है उसके लिए। और दोनों म्यूजियम आप देख सकते हैं, पटना म्यूजियम भी देख सकते हैं और बिहार म्यूजियम भी देख सकते हैं। तो मेरे को नहीं लगा कि किसी ने भी उसका उतना विरोध किया, सिर्फ सिवाय कुछ अखबार वाले जो जिनको ऐसा लगा कि ऐसा होना चाहिए। मगर हम स्टूडेंट्स के लिए 25 रुपये का टिकट देते हैं तो वो उतना कंपनसेट कर लेते हैं उस तरह से। और वहाँ पर एक योजना भी चीफ मिनिस्टर ने चलाई हुई है कि हर स्कूल को भ्रमण के लिए पैसा देते हैं। तो उस बसें 8-10 बसें तो उन बच्चों की आती हैं वहाँ पर देखने के लिए, तो हमेशा वो भरा ही रहता है। बड़ा इतना मुश्किल हो जाता है कई बार ठीक से देखना, क्योंकि लोग सेल्फी ले रहे हैं या खड़े हुए हैं उसके आगे, तो बहुत मुश्किल हो जाता है ठीक से देखना भी। और हमने गाइडेड टूर भी वहाँ पर चालू किए हैं। तो ऐसे, और हम कंटेम्परेरी आर्ट के भी बहुत सारे प्रोग्राम वहाँ करते हैं। 2-3 तो इंटरनेशनल प्रोग्राम ही किए। मीजो टेंट का किया, जो हिंदुस्तान में किसी ने नहीं किया, उसको वहाँ पर शुरू किया। और उसमें एक निकिता जो रशियन मीजो टेंट फेस्टिवल करते हैं हर 2 साल में, तो उन्होंने कहा कि हम वो एग्जीबिशन भी हम यहाँ पर लाएंगे हर 2 साल में एक बार। तो ऐसे बहुत सारी चीज़ें हैं उसमें। और एक और हमारा बड़ा एम्बिशियस प्रोजेक्ट है कि हम म्यूज़ियम का बाइनियल करें। हम जो लोग स्कॉलर का बाइनियल करते हैं या और दूसरी चीज़ों के बाइनियल करते हैं, म्यूजियम का कोई बाइनियल नहीं होता। तो हमारी कोशिश है कि अगर सरकार हमको फाइनेंस कर देती है तो हम 10 या 12 म्यूजियम्स को इनवाइट करें, उनके अपने आर्टिफैक्ट्स के साथ, उनके जो आइकॉन हैं जो जिससे वो म्यूजियम प्रसिद्ध हैं, तो एक ऐसा एक इंटरनेशनल रिलेशन बने इस म्यूजियम का और दूसरे म्यूजियम का। तो ऐसी बहुत सारी योजनाएं हम उसमें करने वाले हैं। अभी थंका का एक बहुत बड़ा एग्जीबिशन और वर्कशॉप दोनों है, और थंका के वो वाले आर्टिस्ट हैं जो इंडिया के भी नहीं है, नेपाल, भूटान, तिब्बत, सिक्किम, थाईलैंड, उन सारे आर्टिस्टों को भी हमने बुलाया। तो ऐसे प्रोग्राम करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं जो हिंदुस्तान में उस तरह से कभी हुए नहीं है। तो इसलिए उसका फुटफॉल हमेशा बढ़ भी रहा है, बहुत सारे लोग उसका आते हैं, और बहुत सारे प्रोग्राम हम 5 बजे के बाद करते हैं ताकि म्यूजियम की एक्टिविटी जो है उस तरह से डिस्टर्ब ना हो। तो मैं समझता हूँ कि ये थोड़ा सा अपवाद है, अभी पता नहीं मतलब बाद में क्या हो, जैसे भारत भवन का बाद में क्या हुआ, मगर जब तक अशोक जी, स्वामी जी थे तो उसका, और ये सारे म्यूजियम जिसका दृष्टि व्यापक होती है उसी पे ही रहते, चाहे वो प्राइवेट म्यूजियम हो चाहे वो सरकारी म्यूजियम हो। अगर आपकी दृष्टि व्यापक नहीं है तो आप उसको नया रूप दे ही नहीं पाएंगे, बल्कि स्थिर म्यूजियम की तरह हो जाएंगे। तो मैं समझता हूँ कि ये इस बात को आगे बढ़ाने के लिए और भी वक्ता उसको बढ़ाएं और देखें कि क्या हो सकता है।
राजन, thank you. I think I'll also take a little. Thank you. First of all, good evening, everybody, and Ashok ji, thank you very much. I mean, thank you to you and to Raza Foundation and to ISC to give us this platform. And you know, as you said, I'm here because I'm going to share a bit of a story, a bit of the inspiration, the spark that I personally developed because of where I came from and the artist who happened to be my father, and when he passed away. So I'm just going to narrate a little bit of the thought behind it, the journey, and how we went about doing this. So it's just going to have a little bit of a 5-part kind of a presentation with the audio visual, and I thought it'll give a little insight, and hopefully if you have any questions, I'd love to address them as well. When my father passed away, he had left a body of work. It was 6 decades of work. There was no question that in the last few years of his ailing body and his illness, there was a huge deterioration in the work. I mean, and we needed to put it and to restore it, and you know, the family felt a very strong desire. So there was a stake. There was a personal stake for us to revive, restore, and put that up. The process was extremely illuminating for me. Why? Because I actually learned a lot about my own father, who I thought I knew, but when I started diving deep into and working with the team, when we were going to the archive, I learned a lot. So it was a very enriching experience for me and the rest of the family as well as my brother. And also I realized that it was not just modernization or restoration, there was a lot more work had to be done in order to make sure that the museum or the display was relevant to the society, relevant to us, and not just as you know, my predecessor just mentioned, it's not a dead space. It had to have an organic life to an environment, which is what a museum should be. So that was the beginning of this journey. My father, just to give you a brief idea, some of you might know him, a lot of people don't know him. He was actually a chemist, a chemical engineer. He was a scientist. And you know, over the years that went by through his academic pursuits, he was constantly pulled back to his passion, and passion was art. And the partition, the struggle that he went through had an indelible impact on him, and it had a huge impact on his art. So that was a very strong kind of association I found, and we all found, and I think over the years when we put all the 60 decades of work right in front of you, you get a different perspective. You know, when you go through a 60-year life, you have different compartmentalized. So we were able to really get a huge impact on being able to visually see the work and the body of work that he had. Really a day did not pass while he was here in the studio, which is where we placed the museum, that he did not work there or did some creative process. And that's where we thought we would embody, and that was the origin of saying, where should we make the museum? It had to be where the studio and there where he lived. His journey was full of struggle. And I think what was important for us was to be able to be relevant to the display and to also the archives, because apart from having the struggle, apart from being an artist, he was a person who never sold anything. And he was just, every piece of paper over the last 60 years of his life, he kept. So we had a huge task ahead of us to really find how can we make this museum, which was a single artist museum, as Ashokji said, to be relevant, not just a dead space, but to be having a kind of an interplay with society, interplay with people who would come and hopefully not just see the display, but also interact with it over time. Just to give a bit background, once he had made the commitment away from being an artist, from his academics, he became an artist, and that was his life, and that was the way he earned his money. That's how he raised his family, and it was a huge commitment from his perspective at that point in time. Now coming down to the space and the museum, knowing the artist, I've just given you a brief display, knowing and having the body of work and the archives that we had, we wanted to find out what is it that we need to put in this museum to make sure that it's not just a mere display or a dead space for people to come just view. Obviously we had a storage issue, the space, the design, we had a team to be assembled, because it just could not be done by me. I don't know the ABC of putting together something that we thought that we wanted to do. So we had to assemble a team, and then we wanted to create a vision, a long-term vision, that how this museum is going to be relevant over a period of time. So to start with, the place was a mess. It was an absolute, and I think all of you know artists, some of you are artists. Creation and original thought comes in a chaotic environment. It does not come in a clinical and a clean environment. And I think Ashokji, and you say that a museum has to have a very clinical, clean place so people can come. So it has to be different from what the place of creation was. So that was a huge effort for us, because we had to do a sort of, I'll show you some photographs in a minute. But we also formed a team. We had an architect, we got a curator, we got a display designer, we have a catalog and a print designer, we got an archiver, and then we had one-man Friday for us to really put the team together and get things done. It took us 2 years. And every day there was something new that had to be done. We had to collect all the pieces together, we had to store them, bring them back from storage. It was physically and emotionally quite a tiring process, but there wasn't a day that I think we were not inspired, because it really became an inspiration for all of us to see, because it was his 60 years of work. So I think that always pulled us back for it. It's 1,550 square feet. It's not a huge amount of space, and it was divided into 3 levels. I'll go into a minute. We wanted also to display the entire range of mediums that he had worked in. He is known as a sculptor, but he's also a poet. He's also a sketch. He had done a lot of pastels and pen to pencil drawings, tapestries. He had collaborated with a lot of the master weavers to build the tapestries. So we wanted to be able to display all of it in a kind of a logical way. That's where the team came in, and people who obviously have a talent towards that. The remodeling had to take place of the space. We did not want to change the space completely. So it is in his studio. It was the place where he lived and created most of his life. It was led by Sujata and Vipul, our architect team, who worked with us very, very carefully. The design was not complicated. I love the Bihar Museum, as you saw. When you have a simple design, I think it allows people to come and interact more easily with. If things become complicated, or you can clutter it with a lot of work, and that's what you will see that this is, but the design of the space has to be simple, and that's what we thought, and that was our guiding factor. This was the place. It was, it had been ad hoc put expansion, etc. for it. It was really not in a very, this was the inner museum, which was completely in a bit of a mess. I mean, if you had to go out there, I think he created most of his pieces in this kind of an environment. That was what was the important part. But yes, it was not kept over the years in a space which you could find it very hospitable, as you would expect a quote-unquote museum type environment. This was the design. We obviously went through a lot of iterations with the designer. We had to store stuff, we got the storage back, and this was the space that finally we had constructed. To clean out a lot of the space. As I said, the original floor space and the original building is the same, but we added a lot of features to it. This is the display was inside. This was the mezzanine floor where we have put in a lot of the archives and some of his poster work that he had done of his exhibitions. This is the display of a chronological display of all his creations over the years that we were able to put together. So there's a photograph on the other side. So again, 1,550 square feet is not a huge space, but if you work with a team which is an expert in it, and the confluence of the ideas that came through were incredible. And it wasn't my idea, it wasn't just the architect, it was the team's idea, because we used to have discussions almost on a weekly basis. Unfortunately, I don't live in Delhi, so it was always conference calls. So the whole process, we kept one strong principle, that everybody needed to put their input in. And I think that's what gave us, brought the team together a lot and got a lot of original ideas from the entire process that we administered for ourselves. Just a little quote from the architect: the design has been kept modest, intentionally, weaving a museum-like space with the fabric of the Janpur extension section of New Delhi. So it's not that it stands out. The building still merges very well with the environment, so it is not that all of a sudden you turn the corner and you see a very unique kind of a building with a completely different space. So it stays very much intact in its original form. And the new proportions have been added because we had to display a lot. We had to create alcoves within the museum to ensure that we were able to display the variety of mediums and the work he had done over the 60 years for it. This process of putting this museum together brought a very interesting thought, and I want to share this, and I think this is probably maybe the essence that Ashokji wants for us to be able to bring in the public platform. What is a museum? What should it be? So when we got together as a team, we said that there is a responsibility of a museum. The responsibility has a very strong responsibility for preserving history. A museum, I compare, me personally, is to a library. Somebody wants to go read a book. The writer can be dead and gone for 100 years. If you go to a library, you can read what he wrote 100 years ago and you learn from it. A museum is a repository of history. It needs to be preserved. It needs to have archives. It needs to have, for the future generations, the ability to research. It needs to have interpret the contents. As they say, beauty lies in the eye of the beholder. A piece of art might have been initiated by the artist with a particular thought, but the viewer can interpret it completely differently. So I think it's not to preserve the idea of the artist only, but it's also just to preserve the history so that it can be seen by everybody and interpreted and interacted with. There are physical aspects about the museum, but it is also that interested people should have the ability to interact with the content. So we wanted to have an outreach program, and I'll share with you what our programs we have developed through that thought process. They need to be managed by people who have the passion. This is not an administrative job the way I look at it, and I've learned this by interacting in the team, that it is not, it's not about keeping the finances in order, even though I'm a man of finance. I think I always look at the balancing the checkbook at the end of the day. But the essence has to be led by passion, by people who have a passionate stake in the game, and also they have to be acutely relevant to society. I think a museum cannot stand by itself in a sustainable basis, whether it's a single artist museum or for that matter any other kind of museum. It has to be relevant. It needs to be collaborative. It cannot stand by itself. And it has to be a collaboration with the government. The government in our part of the world is a dominant fact. That's a reality. So it has to be a partnership. But the initiative has to be from the private sector. And I think that's where some of us, at least the 4 people that are invited here and many more, who have taken the Persian initiative from different vantage points, this is ours. And it's also important to have that dialogue. It's absolutely imperative to have a dialogue with the environment and with the people who want to interact, which means it has to be open for every single person who's interested in it. Roots and knowledge of ours is part of the development of society. I think that's a very motherhood statement, but there is no question that museums do have a huge role to play. The art that we have in our part of the world, in our country, whether it's craft, whether it is abstract art, whether it is really whatever you can put, at the end of the day, it reflects on the development, evolution of society. So museums have to preserve it. If we don't preserve it, we will lose it. And I think to a certain extent, we might have lost our way there. That's the impression I get, and also interacting with the team and other people. So this was our guiding principles that we felt as a team are very important for this museum, and how we were going to make this small little initiative of ours. It's not a huge thing, as I said. It's 1,550 square feet is not huge by any standards, but we have some very aggressive and lofty, at least, ambitions. The core of our museum is the archives, because the artist never threw a piece of paper. This is a very relevant photograph. This is Raza Saab and his wife. It is when my father, the artist, had his first one-man exhibition in 1965. We discovered this photograph around a year and a half ago. Well, I don't know where it was over the preceding 70 years, but it was preserved somewhere in that mess that you saw. So I think we realized that out of all the archives that were kept, the correspondence, the manuscript of public text, the notes that he had, the sketchbooks, images of his artworks, art magazines that he kept, things that inspired him. He used to read other magazines, other artists' works, other artists' correspondence. I saw Raza Saab's and Kishan Saab, correspond. I mean, there's a lot of, every artist had his own little correspondence. So we saw a lot of that. The exhibition catalogs, newspaper clipping, etc. So archives is at the core of our museum. We feel that these archives, we have a professional archiver. We've given the archiver full freedom to be able to make this material cross-reference, make it relevant, so people can say what was it that the sketchbooks that the artist had. He had poetry books. We got almost 700 of his poems written by him by hand. So this archive is the core of our museum. It's absolutely extremely important for us to feed into the vision that we want people to come and interact with it. We also had to create an outreach program. And we felt that in order to be relevant to the society, we have to use technology. Well, we have to be up to date. I think in Bihar Museum, looking at the architecture there is incredible. I mean, to see and having the kind of platforms that we saw on that movie. So we created a website. It's an interactive website. It's comprehensive. We engaged with a website manager who keeps it relevant and keeps it alive. The team interacts with that person all the time. Anything that happens in the museum is immediately put on the website. It keeps changing. It's an evolutionary process. We created the Delhi NCR project. My father had put, or the artist has about 19 to 20 pieces in the 20 kilometers that we stand, right where we are, including the ISC, his pieces of art. We said we need to consolidate this. We need to find out where these arts are. We found at least some of these arts were being neglected. I hate to say it, not only neglected, but there was no empathy at all. I mean, some of them were just broken pieces lying, all that. But we wanted to do a restoration. We wanted to locate these pieces. And I'll go to them. I'll show you some photographs that just to give you an idea of what we are trying to do. We created the Skull Talks. The first one actually is with Himmat Shah on actually day after tomorrow. It's a monthly talk masters like him, experienced artists like them, interact with young students from Jamia, from JNU, from wherever, from all walks. We got a list of mailing where we want to encourage them to come and listen to him. So he'll be there for an hour and a half, and give us in the space, in the space that you see there. So that's going to be on a regular basis. We have publications. In fact, I would encourage you. We've published a small little booklet. It's lying outside. Please feel free to take one. If they run out, just let us know, and we'll happy to send you. And we have other publications in the process. We want to also do a book at some stage. There is also an outreach to the immediate community. Baba had made a bust on Lala Lajpat Rai. So we went to the local community, went to local MLA. He's willing to put that in the Lala Lajpat Rai park, which is there. So we said that we'll set aside, again, coming down to a little bit of the finances, set aside some money. So there is no, I'm not going to go and sell that piece to somebody. The foundation or the museum, for whatever personal resources we have, to become relevant to the immediate society, because he lived there for 50, 60 years. A lot of people should not just completely forget, because I think that's one of the responsibilities we have, is to keep it alive. We participate in the India Art Fair. We have museum visits, lots of them. I'll share with you a few. And then we also have a creative foundation, which is going to be funding young artists. In fact, the first Kavita is here. She was participated when Baba had started, the artist has started a creative fund, sponsored young artists to go abroad or come here or go for an education. So this is our outreach program that we have for the museum. We want it to be relevant. We want it to be participatory. If anybody has ideas, we have an interactive website. People can leave ideas. They can talk to us. They can, give us anything. As far as I'm concerned, we are completely open and flexible to adapt as we go along in making this place relevant. This is the website, just to give you an idea. We have a repository. We have a very interactive website. Please, if you get a chance, amarnathsehgal.com. If you go to it and your reactions, you can leave them behind, make a comment and leave it behind at the website. This is the part of the NCR project. This is the sculpture captive, which is here at the Indian International Center, just about 70 feet away from where we are sitting right now. At the Ford Foundation, we found this was the sculpture there, which is right now over there. It's a ball bearing based sculpture. It's supposed to move with the wind. It's still there. The ball bearing is completely gone because it is 35 years of age. It hasn't been patinaed, etc. So nobody's maintained it as it should be. So we went to the administration of the Ford Foundation. We have an outreach program to them so that we are willing to take the maintenance. They've been extremely helpful and extremely receptive. Like the administration head there, the guy says, please get access to it. In fact, he's even given us access to our guests. If I want to take, say, you would like to go there, as you know, the Ford Foundation is like the Fort Knox. You can't even go inside because you have to go through a security check, etc. But they're willing to look at our letterhead and said that if your guests come in. So I think it allows us to revive that piece of art which has been there for the past 35 years. It was put there when Stein designed this whole complex, and he selected that sculpture along with Mr. Bhalla. We have been able to now maintain it, revive it. We put a plaque, there's no plaque there. Nobody knows who the artist is. Everybody looks at the sculpture every day, but they know nothing about the sculpture. So I thought that maybe that was relevant for people to know, and I think as a team. This is just next to it, the World Bank, the floating nymph. They have maintained it well. I have to say that. They have maintained it. They've got a plaque. They've kept it in the original way. And it's part of our documentation. This is a collection of the Oberoi. I think they've maintained it very well as well. We've got a contract now with them in order to make sure that it's all maintained properly patina because they're bronzes. But of course, because they're inside, most of them, they obviously are preserved a lot better. But after the renovation, we actually went and got them all restored back to the kind of original patina on the bronze. This is an example of a neglect. At the Akbar Bhavan, which now is an administration block, I think the SOAS University, it was in a pretty sorry state. This is how it was. It was actually, the pedestal was almost broken. It was slightly tilted. When we opened it down, it was completely, I mean, as I say, rusted at the base. We have a team of people who work on pedestal. So we got a granite pedestal done. We replaced the base. We got it cleaned up, and now you can go and look at it. Actually, from the Nehru Park, you can see it very nicely as well, because we cleaned out the place there. Again, in the whole process, we saw a very cooperative spirit from the people who are the administration in that SOAS university, because it is part of the government, it's part of the External Affairs Ministry. But when we went to them, it was very easy for us to get. This one is the lost sculptures. This was a sculpture put at the Palam airport. It is 40 feet high, it's lost. We don't know where it is. So we have a whole initiative to find where the sculpture is. This part of the India Art Fair, we had outreach to the schools. They keep coming with young students, art students who are interested to come in. This is part of the Sculpt Talk series. This is just to give you an idea, this is an NGO actually came down who encourages art in very less developed communities. We had some diplomatic community. We had a writer from the art writers. So number of kind of visitations, and they all have left behind something that we learned from them. And as I said, it's a journey. It's work in progress. And this is the artist trying to put touches to one of his sculptures. As I say, a sculpture is never complete, and so our job is never complete. So this is a journey. I think it'll go on. And that's the end of the presentation of what we did, but over the past 2.5 years to put together. Thank you.
Good evening, and sorry for my late arrival, because apparently we were circling over Delhi for there was a thunderstorm, so we were circling over Delhi for a while. So quickly to take you through what we do and what I'm up to in Mumbai. We've started what is called the Piramal Museum of Art, and it is absolutely brand new. We're about 2 years old as a museum, as a public museum, and we're about now 4 years old as an art foundation. And I'll take you a little bit through the story of how we started, where we're going, and what our vision is, because we do call ourselves a museum, but we are at such an infant stage where we're keeping everything very open, and you'll see what we've been up to. So this is a quick introduction to the family that supports the program. It's a completely philanthropic project. It is not a corporate collection. Large collections like this with a name like Piramal constantly get associated with being a corporate collection. It is not. This is completely from the private funding from the family, and it goes into a foundation. So the artworks that we have in our exhibit, in our museums, and the work that we do is 100% for public, and it has no corporate attachment to it, which we try to make a point to people, because there are two types of collecting that happens nowadays, and we want to clearly draw that line. So this is Mr. Piramal, Mrs. Piramal, their children, and all of them, the reason why they're all there is all of them have an opinion, a taste, a choice in what we collect, how we grow, and they're an active part of this. So it's like I am the sixth person there who kind of works through what the museum is going to be. So fundamentally we are two things. One is we are a very large collection of artwork and artifacts. So there is, and since we're at the beginning stages, we are very actively involved in acquiring, collecting, and building. And this ranges from both, it started with modern Indian art, where most collectors start their collections with, and then it rapidly grew into collecting contemporary artwork, and then from there we said, how do we provide a context to what we have? So we said, let's start with how far does Indian modern art go? So we said, okay, we have to start from Mughal miniatures or the Persian miniatures, so we can understand how art comes into this country, and then the influences it had on all the masters, because most modern masters talk about the influences from the miniatures and so on. So we started there and started building the gaps, and then we came into everything from your company influenced artwork, then to your Bengal school, and then so it then eventually started snowballing into this larger and larger narrative. And that's when we did a lot of learning personally myself as well as the collectors. And subsequently now, it doesn't dwell into antiquity so much, but we very much are in the edge of that, where we do have certain niche collections like the Shringar collection, which is the country's largest collection of women's beauty products that were used from as much as the 10th century all the way till the last century. So there's everything from makeup, eyeliner things to combs and foot scrubbers. It's a fantastic collection, which we will display soon. So that's the range of what we have collected. So we said, there was literally a point about 6 years ago where we said, we are now sitting on something which is beyond us. Like, we ended up collecting so many of these important artworks that we realized that it's no longer a collection of artwork that's supposed to hang in a corporate building or in a house or in a space. The historical importance of the collection has taken over or has gone further than what we are as collectors. So that's when we set up the foundation and said, okay, let's formalize this, let's actually put something out there. And then we said, there's no point in just a foundation, because then all we were doing is getting asked for money. And then we said, no, that's not what we're doing. So we then eventually said, okay, here's the plan for a museum. And that's where my work really started, because in Bombay, real estate is something you cannot afford. You cannot even think of opening a space in Bombay that's large enough to qualify as a museum. However, I'm very happy that today I think the country has come to a point where museums can be almost anything. And I think it's wonderful that we've come to the point where the word museum is not so loaded anymore. Initially when we get asked saying, okay, if you're a museum, do you have this? And I think we've come to the point where museums can be single artists, or they could be massive institutions that are funded by the government. So we started here. This was our first major show, but our second show that we did. This was inside the atrium of our corporate building in Lower Parel. It is a good 8,000 square feet. So it is not small by any standards, and particularly for Bombay, it's a fairly large space. But we had a giant void in the building. It was the atrium. It had 10 floors of open space and a giant square in the center. So we were given the idea. We said, okay, here's the space, now what, right? And in India, you have to still start looking for the professional network or the infrastructure for the arts. And that's been an interesting exercise for us, where everything from the exhibition design, the exhibition designers, the curators, the professionals who can fabricate a space like this, because this keeps changing with every exhibition. So, and then of course we need to bring in the audience, we need to get the PR. So it's a huge exercise. We're still in progress with that, and I'll talk to you about that as we go along. But this was our first exhibition, and we did not start small. We were highly ambitious, and we said, Ravi Verma. Like, we didn't even want to start small. We said, okay, how do we make an impact? How are people going to sit up and look at us? It was just the point, but how do we show something new? How do we, in a very deeply researched, highly studied space, how do we come and present new theory, new history, new understanding? So we did this show, and we also told people that it isn't a private collection. So 100% of the show was borrowed. We did not show anything from our own collection. So we had about 35 original works of Ravi Verma, and then his nephews and sons and uncles and cousins, all their works. We had all his lithographs from his studio. We had the advertisements that were done with his lithographs. We had his albumen prints, and so little histories. People didn't know that Ravi Verma's venture into printmaking started because of the success of his photographs. So he would take photographs of his paintings. He did an exhibition in Bombay in 1889 or something, and sold out the photographs. So he said, okay, I need to make more. That's when he got into printmaking. Anyway, so things like that you would learn in an exhibition like this. It was a huge success. It was, as a museum, as a private entity, was a nightmare, because one, insurance companies had never insured artwork of this. So the advantage of it being a private entity and a corporate entity is now that in India you can actually get insurance for artworks of such values, upwards of 400 crores. can be insured in India today because we've set the framework for it. Then of course here this is a big jump, but this is our space in Kurla, and it is a staircase. And you might ask, why is a staircase a museum? So it's a fairly elaborate staircase. It runs about 3 floors up and down, and it's about 15. They're actually large staircase because those works are about 15 feet to between 10 to 15 feet. So they're fairly large. So our idea of a museum kind of moved from the need for space and the unaffordability of space, to how can we use spaces that are already there in Bombay. So a company like Piramal has 5 properties. They're spread across. So Kurla is the main headquarters for the company, and Lower Parel is the corporate headquarters for the company. So I said, let's take over this space, and this is public access. Anybody can go up there and down. There is no, you don't need security cards, you don't need ID readers to go in there. So we set up this first show. This was actually shown in Delhi first during India Art Fair, and then it's come to us now, and we still actively are showing this on a fairly permanent basis. So set it up, brought in the artists, and in Kurla, again, art is non-existent in those pockets, right? So Kurla, we have spaces in Baikula, which again was earlier a very popular location, and I think in the 1850s to 1890s was a very popular space, and then kind of died down and is now reviving. So we have real estate projects that are happening in Bombay. So I said, I'm going to take over the real estate show flat. So we said, they're large, they're huge spaces. This is just the it's an outdoor garden hall space which accommodates about 100 people, and actually that was Nikhil Chopra doing a performance. And then inside the space, it's 70,000 square feet of a sales center, and we saw no reason why people can't come and see the best artworks there. So we have our permanent collection of Raza Saab is there, Hussain, of Gaitonde, Bhupen Khakar. So you can actually come into the middle of Bombay in some place like Baikula, which is this property is right behind Bahudaji Lad Museum. So you can come to 2 museums in the same space in the same day, and get to see some of the best artwork. And the programs that we build in these spaces are the same as you'd get in a museum. So there are docents around, people can take you around, there is literature that you can read, there's enough material that you can go through. You can sit here, spend a whole day, nobody's going to try and sell an apartment to you. You can just look at artwork and not worry. So we've done all that. So we bring in a lot of that training to our own staff, to our security. These are actually very intimidating spaces for a lot of people to walk into. But if you just say art museum, Piramal museum, that keyword will get you into the space quicker and without any hassle whatsoever. So this is our latest gallery. This is in Mulund. And this is, again, if you can see, it's on the walls, and everything inside is actually a show flat, and everything outside is a sales center. But again, it provides for very large walls, interactive spaces, and Mulund, again, doesn't have much of an art community. There are lots of people who love art. There are people who are artists, but there is no space for you to come in and showcase anything. So the Mulund Gallery has opened, and it is a space for younger, local, contemporary art. So this is our gallery where you can come in and see what's happening in Bombay at this time by the younger artists. Baikula is a more of the modern gallery. Lower Parel keeps changing. Kurla is for contemporary. So in a sense, now you'll realize, instead of having one giant museum with multiple gallery sections, we are in multiple parts of the city with specific focused galleries. And it's kind of people are taking to this, because in a city like Bombay, nobody in Mulund is going to visit, Prince of Wales Museum in 10 years maybe. There are people in Colaba who say, oh, I haven't been to the Prince of Wales Museum, in like 20 years. I went there when I was in school. So Bombay has that problem. It's not that navigable sometimes, and people become very localized. So this was our first exhibition, 2015. It's called Smriti, and we published a book by that name. This is the first time we actually ventured out and said, okay, here's our collection, look at it. Because also the collector, right, when you show something that is that you've collected, you want some kind of feedback, or you want some kind of criticism. So this is our first show, and of course there's the giant Kishan Khanna on the right side. So it wasn't just showing works. We'll get into quickly. There's just more views of our exhibition. So all these works are original Ravi Vermas that have never been displayed in ages. They've come from both private collection and government collections. That's how we learned how to work with government museums, which, when you're in the private space, things happen very fast, and in the government space, things could happen. There were paintings that we were getting approvals on 1 hour before the show was opening at 11 a.m. on a Sunday, and at 10 a.m. I had a team waiting at a museum for one particular work, to come to get released. So that's how situation. But eventually now in Bombay, at least, the major museums are very comfortable lending to the private museums if you want to borrow. We've made it easy for them. We've created enough procedures where they are comfortable. So these things are part of what we're trying to establish as an infrastructure build in that city. This was again an exhibition. So we also try, so the reason why you see some of these shows which are fairly erratic, they're not specifically curated, because we also try to have a curatorial program, because you need to have curators, you need to have writers, the infrastructure has to be built. So we had some young curators from Bombay come up with this exhibition. This was something completely, it was Japanese. So one part of our collection has Japanese artwork, and we actually have about 20 important Edo period Japanese screens. So we said we'd do this show, again, completely different audience. It's always amazing how every time you do a show and then you do another one. So for example, we did Japan. We had more people walk into this exhibition than we did for our previous Smriti one, which was about the modern artists, right? So we started to learn that there's diverse interest, diverse people who are coming in. A lot more people apparently seem to like things like this, which are not so intimidating in terms of the very formal artwork that you look at. This was a very successful exhibition that we did that looked at craft from all over India, and we tied it down to the environment and crafts, meaning how craft is influenced by the landscape that they are made in. So we chose everything from these Cherial dolls, and then we had artwork from Manipur, from Bengal, from Madhya Pradesh, a whole bunch of places, and this was a very successful show because it completely identified with a group of people who knew nothing about modern and contemporary art, but who appreciated traditional craft. Then this was our big show. This was the first retrospective of ceramics in India. This we did last year in 2017, and since then ceramics has become a very hot topic amongst looking at art in India today, and how ceramics have been a big part of it. So this show was actually curated by Annapurna Garimala, and she brought together artists and studio artists, potters, ceramists from India from 1947. And actually what we're showing you here, if you look at the brown little vases, teacups, these ones. So those were actually designed by NID for Air India. And that's the first time NID has ever lent anything to anybody anywhere outside of their institution. And people, those of you who are part of the museum culture will understand that it's a huge feat. I mean, I'm not tom-tomming about borrowing 4 teacups, but borrowing from NID was quite a task. And a lot of award-winning ceramists had lent to us. So in all, there was about 140 artists and pieces, well over 300 pieces, which were successfully transported in and back. Which again was a logistics exercise for us, because museums now need to know, are there enough trained arts professionals who can carry artwork, transport it, make sure it's packed well. This was over 80-90 people who we had to satisfy, making sure that ceramics don't break, right? So it was quite a big exercise logistically, and of course curatorially it did very well. It was one of our most attended exhibitions. And as you can see, this is the same place in Lower Parel. It keeps changing. We modify the structure. We allow for the exhibition to dictate the design. And then we had a gap period, and one of my curators said, and this was earlier this year, they said, you know what, there's all this artwork, there's all the people who come in here, we're talking about inclusive, we're talking about, I keep telling my team, both the security guard should walk in, so surprisingly, Bombay is built that way. You have a corporate park and around it is like a belt of slums, and and we in fact have a red light area, right? So I said, how do we get those people and those children to walk in? That's who I want to influence, because one small impact there might change one child's dream, and then we've done our job. So we said, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to have a properly curated exhibition of anybody's artwork from the entire Peninsula Corporate Park, which is what we are based in. And for 2 months, we kept sending out pamphlets and reaching out to people. And the response was unbelievable. We had 400 submissions. I mean, it wasn't like the greatest artwork. It wasn't like we're trying to find the next artist, but the people who submitted the artwork were unbelievable. So my best moment was our own security guard who works in the space does portraits of every visitor. He has 20-30 books of portraits of visitors who he's been observing walking into the museum, right? And we have no clue this guy could even draw anything. We had housekeeping boys who were doing all this crochet woven things, and then we had all kinds of people, including one of the CEOs of another company, actually from Reuters, who worked. He sent his watercolors that he does on Sundays. So it was an unbelievable mix of people, and then it flooded into, can we send poetry? Can we come and read something? Can we do a play? And it just became a free-for-all. So 3 weeks this space functioned as a community-based show, and people could do what they want. And it was fascinating. And since then, our own engagement has improved because they all now feel it is their museum. So when we do shows and events, they come up and are part of this. So to which brings us here. This was our last show. It actually concluded about 10 days ago. And this was a fairly large retrospective of Raza Saab's that we have done. This was the first time we actually did say, okay, this 100% of this collection that was on display was ours. We've been building a substantial collection of his works, and all the way from the 1940s until the 1990s. And from our collection, we displayed about 40 works in total. And by this time, and now after about 2 years worth of trying to run a museum space, I think we're getting our act together a little bit. So this was attended by 9,000 people over a period of 3 months, which actually is a big achievement because places like NGMA in Bombay get about 40,000 people a year. So in terms of numbers, I think we had good impact. We also were doing groups of about 60 children every day from various schools, and we have activities for them. We have a complete program. So now we're developing these larger programs for people to come in and engage with. If you have a school, you can approach us. If you have friends, you can come along. If you have any kind of group comes in, we have programs for you and kind of activities that you can do and spend time here doing. So we have things like, activities for children, group tours, guided tours, and this you can call in any day. So our timings actually is something we thought about. We're open from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. because in Bombay, if we're open 9 to 5, nobody's going to come to our museum because everybody's working 9 to 5 in Bombay. So we're open later, and on weekends, we're Saturday and Sunday, we're open from 10 a.m. to 11 p.m. So we end up getting a lot of people walking in at these hours, either after lunch, before dinner, after dinner. They walk around, and it's right next to the mall. Both are actually Kurla and Lower Parel are situated right next to the Phoenix Mall. So that's a huge group of people who walk in, and then as they hear about us, they come and see our exhibitions. We do all kinds of performances. We have talks and seminars. In fact, we just did the first art educators seminar, which was to bring in art teachers from Bombay to learn how to teach students art. So that went off very well. And then, of course, just several of the activities that we do. We also engage with the community. So we sponsor a lot of walking tours and things that happen around the city, where every Sunday there is something happening. You can explore our neighborhood. So you can go for a walk of Kurla, walk of Baikula, walk of Lower Parel, walk of wherever we're in. So we're in Thane as well. Anyway, so then one thing we said, okay, how do we go from just creating spaces to providing opportunities? Because when you create space, you're approached by people saying, hey, can you help us? We're an artist, and we constantly get approached by artists. So we had this space. It was a dump in the middle of Thane. It was an old factory site, and this was like some manager's quarters and stuff like that. So we converted that into this space, which is a fantastic residency. It houses 6 people at a time. 6 artists can live and work here. And our programs run throughout the year. We have 8 residencies that happen every year. You have to apply for it, and this is an independent program. So administratively, I stay out of it. My curators stay out of it. There's a separate team that manages it because we don't want to interfere in the process of art being made. So there is a completely separate team. So all I can say is you can go to our website and apply, and beyond that, it's a whole other process. But we've built a space that is very conducive for making art. It's a lovely place in Thane, and Thane has now suddenly, all the artists there come and hang out here, and we have Sudhir Patardhan, who's our big brand ambassador. He lives there, so you'll find him walking around every evening there. And so it's creating its own community. So all I can say is if you're in Bombay, please come to Thane and you can participate, and I stay completely out of it. So this is just our office. We have our library set up there. We have state-of-the-art storage for our collection. And of course, we do a lot of stuff. So we did this film. So since we have this, it went the other way around. So I walked into Kishan Khanna's studio for the first time I ever met him. He was 89 years old. We had no Kishan Khanna in our collection because our collectors have to understand the artists. It's a process. So we met him, and all of you have met Kishan Khanna, and once you meet him, there's no difference between him, artwork, it's just there. So so he was painting this painting called A Far Afternoon, or rather it got called A Far Afternoon later, but he was painting this painting, and the first thing I said was, we need to make a film. There is no other artist of his age alive today who's doing work, and we have to get him on film. So we made this film, which eventually, you guys can watch it it's on iTunes and Google and YouTube and all that stuff, but went on to win 2 national awards for it. So we did this film. We also, so that's a random, published books on our collection. We have a book on Ravi Verma with a lot of important writing from a lot of important researchers on Ravi Verma. And yeah, so that's our website. Do visit us when you're in Bombay and come and see what we do. We're fairly ambitious, but we hopefully will be there for the long run, and 100% open to all kinds, any kind of collaboration. Doesn't matter how big or small. We are open, completely open to collaborate, as long as it's going to uplift and enrich art in Mumbai. So we are a city-centric, Bombay-centric museum, so we're happy to do anything there. Thank you.
May I request you to occupy your seats?
Thought I could thank the speakers, on your behalf, and that close the meeting, because I don't have much to say, actually. As most of you who are here, they have been to, they must have been, might have been to Sanskriti, and I'm not the right person to speak on museums, actually. I'm a mad collector, if you are collecting art not from a corporate thing, but as an individual, it's very difficult, and you need a lot of passion and a lot of madness to do that. In my case, I'll just tell you the story of how it all started. That's, in fact, that's what I can do. I come from a paper merchant's family. And we had our office and shop, we used to say, in Chowdi Bazaar. And we were in paper business we had paper business for almost 150 years. And just opposite our shop, there was a Kinari Bazaar, sorry, not Kasera Bazaar, which is for selling bartans. And when I was young, I used to see that people will bring cartloads of bartans, and beautiful bartans, and sell them and buy stainless steel bartans, which were new at that time. So I used to wonder why they do it, it's a strange kind of such beautiful things they are selling, just because there is a hole in it which could be easily repaired. But they wanted to buy stainless steel, and that actually that created some kind of a jigyasa or some kind of, interest in me to collect all these kind of things which are sold as junk. And next to our shop was Jama Masjid, which was the real Kabadi Bazaar. Even now it is a Kabadi Bazaar there, a bit of it. And thereafter, but I didn't know what to do. I was not trained, I'm not an artist. I was just as Ashok has said in the beginning, I was a businessman, a trader, I should say. And the provocation from Mulkraj Anand, which Ashok mentioned, I went to sell paper to him for Marg magazine. Because I was representing Balarpur paper mill, and they manufactured art paper for the first time. So therefore, they wanted that art paper to sell in the market and to get some kind of a credibility. So they said, if the Marg uses our paper, then we establish ourselves. So therefore, Mr. Thapar, who was my boss, he said, if you are a good salesperson, but if you can sell this paper to Marg, I'll give you agency for Bombay, which was a great temptation. Although one of my very close friends, Chebalal Paper Company, they were there, but at the same time. So when I went to Bombay and spent 1 or 2 days with Mulk, he asked me, are you free on Saturday, Sunday? I said, yes. Why didn't you come to me with Khandala? Khandala was a retreat, which he has established, and he used to go by train every Friday there and come back on Monday or Tuesday. I went with him and spent 2 days. It was wonderful to have an experience. These were great people, and I was introduced to Mulk by Amrita Pitam, who was my neighbor in Delhi. So I had a little bit of that is why he could meet me, otherwise he would refuse to meet a trader or a businessman, was such a man. And then when I was leaving, he held my hand like this, and he said, Mr. Jain, it will be a pity if you die as a shopkeeper. Do something else. That was the provocation of establishing Sanskriti. And also linking that, my old kind of experience of seeing beautiful things being sold as junk. Everything was put together. And then I thought of establishing an institution in 79, which was Sanskriti Foundation. And which later on, in 84, we started the museum. Museum was mostly of metal objects. I was also inspired and encouraged, rather, I would say, there are 2 people who were important at that point of time. One was Lance Dane. His collection is in Piramal now. Some of his collection.
Yes. Some of it.
Some of it is with the Piramal. And he was an Englishman who stayed back in India after the First World War. So therefore, and Dr. Jyotinder Jain I met, incidentally, in a meeting, and then we became friends. So I kept on collecting, and it was Dr. Jyotinder Jain who put it together. Of course, he was the right person to speak today in front of these wonderful professional people, because he is one of our trustees also. What I did was I bought, guided by Lance Dane and Jyotindra, I started collecting a few objects of daily use and then some dealers they start coming to you. If you start, they know there is a collector or somebody has come up. So they start coming to you, they bring these small things, and then I go to market. And wherever I used to travel, I'll pick up something, small thing. And I put up the museum in the basement of my house. It was you were saying 1,500 square feet?
Yes.
My basement was 400 square feet when I started. And it was inaugurated in 84. It was inaugurated by Papul Jaikar in those days, And that is how it all started. Thereafter, of course, I bought the land and then it was shifted to Sanskriti Foundation. You see, to start collecting is not a great thing. But to take the responsibility of running a museum, if you keep it as a collection, it's all right. You have flexibility. Because I personally feel there are a couple of people, those who thought they will establish a museum and they started collecting. But then they couldn't do it because it's very complicated. I mean, Mr. Rajgopalan will, and you know better, the way you are doing it so professionally. I mean, it's very nice, it's nice to know that. I mean, first of all, the most important thing is writing a caption about a museum. If you don't have people in the government museums, the major problem of the government museum is that there's no caption writers. With the result, they'll just say it is from Maurya period, so and so, a figure, a lady figure, and then that's the end of it. I mean, nothing beyond that. There is no kind of, people, there are not many people who can write, and basically if you go to the museum, unless the information is available. So that is why our museum, we have 3 museums now. We have the collection of everyday art is about, we have got about 2,000 objects, and then we have about 500 objects and 200 are displayed in textiles. And then we have a very nice and one of its kind, the Museum of Terracotta, when about 15 states are represented in that. And there are already, the Terracotta Museum is only 25 years old. But already about 50–60% things have vanished. We acquired new things that they were being made at that time. But they are vanishing so fast, everything is. So therefore, our museum was primarily craft-based. Our intention was to make it a reference museum, not like a museum with period objects and a museum with, name and all that. We thought, for example, in our textile museum, we have got four saris of, two saris of, 2 Parsi saris, 2 Kanjivaram saris, 2 Nila. Like that we have, and we have collected good pieces, but primarily, and with good caption and good kind of information available around it, they help craft people to understand many craft people, because we have got good, we have archived them well, it's all digitized, it's available to people, and lots of fashion designers, lots of people come to our museums and interact with us. I mean that, what I mean is this, that in absence of any kind of government support, or in absence of any kind of government support, or, I mean, forget about finance, we are being harassed, for example, not harassed now, because we got some a comfort letter from the LG house, but we were hounded by local people that why you have established this museum here in this area and that kind of thing. And that is, as you rightly said, I mean, to have acres of land in commercial area is impossible. So but at the same time, and people also, as you rightly said, that people came to see the Japan exhibition, but they will never go and see because I personally feel that museum is a new thing for us. Even, I don't think that museum abroad are more than 300 years or 400 years. I mean, because it all started with colonization, and they brought shiploads of people. When Dr. L.M. Singhvi was our ambassador in London, I was staying with him, and he told me a story, and in fact he took me to that place. There was a ship loaded with Indian objects, which was abandoned, at the side, because he couldn't get the berth to unload. It was standing there as a junk ship for about 20–30 years. It was full of Indian art objects. That is how the museums were made in the Europe, from the loot of the other countries. Now they are thinking to some of them. I think some awareness has happened, and then now France and many other countries are thinking of returning those kind of things. In fact, in our country, if something is old, it has to be replaced. Like your sharir. If you are born, you have to die. So therefore, why should you keep the object? I mean, if जरा सा उसका chip थोड़ा सा हट जाए, तो मूर्ति निकाल देते थे और बेच देते थे. there, till about 20, 30 years, there used to be an auction in every temple in India. Till about 30 years. And they will sell old things and buy the new things. But in a way, indirectly, if you ask me, it helped our craft people also. That is how the craft survived, because it got patronage from temples and the Maharajas. So all this, so what I'm trying to say is this, that perhaps the experience of collecting is to me, that collecting is immense, But at the same time, when you share it with others, it adds value to it, and that is what we have been able to do. And I think what Rajan has shown us, out of nothing, in fact, I mean, any other person other than you, I mean, would have perhaps thought, कि चलो रखो इसको निकाल दीजिएगा. Now you have made something out of it. So this kind of archiving is so important, and caption writing, and then display also. Display also has to be very, very practical. I mean, for example, I mean, in my case, in our case, because it's craft-oriented museum, we have put it more like the one you have shown in your slide, which is of that, when you started the craft collection. Yes. Our display is like that, not like Patna, which you have shown. Because if you have period pieces, very expensive pieces, you have to focus the light and you have to put them into a certain kind of a color combination. But if you have objects of the daily use, then they have to be put together. And then we have collective. I'm not, I didn't know. I thought it will be a discussion between four of us. But it looked, and I'm not used to lectures and speaking all by myself, But anyway, I mean, I think anything else if you want me to share, because you all know me. So in case you want to share anything.
We'll invite the audience.
Achha, fine.
Well, friends, you heard three important, you've seen a bit of what these three museums are doing, and you heard JAIN Saab, who of course was behind establishing some of the most important museums in Delhi. So now it's open to you to ask questions or clarifications or offer a brief comment. Brevity is important because we only have about 15 minutes before we close. So go ahead, shoot the first one and then the others will follow. And the mic will come to you, so don't...
There are no questions, everything is answered.
That's exactly. It is so well explained.
Everything is answered already.
Nobody left any stones unturned here.
Well, if there are no questions, then let me tom my foundation by way of giving you some information of what we are up to. Well, Delhi is in fact getting increasingly sick of us. We do so many things for the simple reason that the foundation is concerned with so many arts, visual arts, poetry, classical music, classical dance, ideas, Gandhi. So we have our plate full, and since our plate is full, we want to make your plate also full, if possible. We are on the 19th of December, we have the first Charles Scoria Memorial Lecture, which is an annual memorial lecture out of the 8 memorial lectures at the Gulmohar Hall in India Habitat Center. The lecture would be delivered by Romy Khosla, the well-known architect. What happens next? The urban landscape in India. Tomorrow, we have Arambh, which is a series we are running at the Alliance Francaise and Triveni Kala Sangam, where we present young classical musicians and dancers. Tomorrow we have a Kuchipudi dancer, Ayana Mukherjee, and on December 15th we have a Kathak dancer, Pradeep Kumar Pathak. What else we are doing? Yeah. Is that all? And then 21st of December, we are running a monthly series called Gandhi Matters as part of the celebrations of Mahatma Gandhi's 150th year. So we will have a foreign scholar, James Douglas, in conversation with Ashish Nandi, and to be held here, Gandhi and the Unspeakable, his final experiment with truth. So you have classical music, classical dance, ideas, architecture. What else do you want if you want to be civilized in Delhi and doing something worthwhile on some evenings? And I can assure you that nothing better is happening anywhere else except in our foundation on that evening. There are many temptations and there are many lures, but we lure you with samosa and tea and biscuits and coffee, and what else do you want except a rich, intense, evocative, sometimes provocative evening. So please do come, and our thanks to our speakers, Yusuf, who is an old colleague and an artist of some eminence, from Patna, used to be in Bhopal, Mr. SEHGAL, who of course is here, but as he told us, he remains outside most of the times. Then Mr. ASHWIN RAJGOPALAN, who drove straight from the airport, more or less.
Sorry.
Yeah. And Mr. O.P. Jain, who is our patron anyway. And thank you very much for all of you being there. And those who have not come, and if you happen to meet them, whether on the phone or on the Facebook or on whatever, tell them what they missed. Thank you. Rather bravely dressed.
No, thank you. I'm in the middle of a wedding storm.
Yes, you got the money.
The big wedding.
Yeah.
Very good.
Oh, so you came from there.
So I'm going back at 3 a.m.